Hi, and welcome back to Focal Point AFR Talk. 888-589-8840 is the number to call, 888-589-8840. Great exchange last night on CNN's Crossfire with Stephanie Cutter, Newt Gingrich, the governor of Maryland, whose name escapes me just for the moment, Malarkey, I can't think of his name, starts with an M, I think. Anyway, and Rick Perry from Texas. I've already played one soundbite from Rick Perry saying, look, I'm against raising the debt ceiling. I'm with him. If you can't find a way to run a country on $2.7 trillion, then you got no business being in politics. You need to find a job that you can handle. That'd be my point. You need to give that chair up to somebody that can find a way to run a country on $2.7 trillion. I mean, it's just absurd that we're talking about raising the debt ceiling with that kind of revenue coming into the federal government. It's not like it's starving for cash. Got more money than they've ever had in the history of civilization. There has never been a government, ladies and gentlemen. There's never been a government in the history of human civilization that has had more money to work with than this government is going to have next year. There is absolutely no reason on God's green earth to raise the debt ceiling one single solitary penny. Now, Rick Perry was on the subject of education last night with CNN, with Stephanie Cutter. And I want you to listen to this little exchange here because I think what Governor Perry is talking about is part of the key to conservatives winning the Hispanic and black vote. Let's listen.
That is not correct if you're pointing to Texas with that. When you look and see what we've done in our public schools in the state of Texas, particularly over the last decade, we have seen the National Assessment of Educational Progress. That's kind of the gold standard, I think you'll agree, when you talk about how kids are doing in school. 8th grade African American and 8th grade Hispanic kids in the state of Texas scored the second highest in America. That's the type of progress you're looking for, particularly in the areas that people care about, which is those STEM courses and where you're moving them into college. We've had almost 500,000 young Hispanics access higher education in the state of Texas from 2000 to 2011.
The second to worst dropout rate in your high schools.
Our graduation rates are 86% in the state of Texas. You know what yours are in Maryland?
They're improving.
83%. That's less than 86, Governor.
Look, I think that we're throwing a lot of statistics around. I want to change course a little bit.
I just love that. That is so illustrative of liberals, what Stephanie Cutter did there at the end. I mean, there was this awkward pause where Governor Perry says, look, our graduation rate is 86% in Texas. What is yours, Governor? Well, it's getting better. It's 83%. And you notice Governor O'Malley, he didn't challenge Governor Perry on that. So he admits, yeah, our graduation rate is 83%. Governor Perry says in Texas, ours is 86%. And by my math, 86 is more than 83. And then there's this absolute stunned, awkward pause because O'Malley's got nothing to say because Rick Perry is right. So Stephanie Cutter says, look, I want to change course a little bit. We've been throwing around statistics. I want to get off of all this facts business. I want to get off of all this research. I want to get off all of this quantitative information. I want to change course. I'm just going to change the topic. And that's what liberals do. They cannot win the argument on the merits. They can't win it based on research. They can't win it based on facts. They can't win it based on history. They can't win it based on logic. They can't win it based on rationality. So what do? They just change the subject altogether. Now, one last soundbite from Governor Perry's appearance last night. This is fairly lengthy, but I want you to listen to it. This is his exchange with Stephanie Cutter on the economics in the state of Texas. This is clip one. Let's listen.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting that you want to cherry pick some numbers that are out there. You know, and we never thought in the state of Texas that you judge success by the number of people that are on public assistance.
Booyah.
And so we made the decision in the state of Texas that we don't want to force people to have to buy insurance.
Booyah.
They have access to some of the finest health care in the world.
Booyah.
We have the Texas Medical Center there, one of the largest medical establishments in the country. So the idea that we're going to make people buy insurance to be a part of Texas, we're about giving people freedom. Freedom to make decisions.
Booyah.
When you see places or companies like Facebook, eBay, some of the Apple, which is soon to be one of the largest employers in the city of Austin, Caterpillar, every engine manufacturer in the United States is now in the state of Texas. When you see Toyota decided to build every pickup truck in America in the state of Texas, they didn't come there. if they were worried about whether or not there was not going to be a
But
skilled
most of those
workforce, that
jobs
the people were going to have
are
health care.
minimum wage jobs.
95% of all the wages in Texas are above minimum wage. 95%.
1 out of 10 minimum wage workers in the country live in Texas. And when you talk about freedom, I also want to talk about opportunity. So for the uninsured, 1 out of 4 Texans are uninsured. Where is their opportunity to be able to afford health insurance if you're not providing them the opportunity to get health insurance?
Well, I think the real issue is here, give people the freedom of whether or not they want to have a good job to be able to take care of their family first. If you don't have that first, then their only alternative is some government
subsistence program. But those people on minimum wage can't afford health insurance. And the other
Again,
piece
I
of
go
the
back
argument,
to, I think
if you don't have insurance,
when you focus
you can't
on,
afford insurance, the only way you can get health care is to show up at the emergency room, which increases premiums for people like us who have insurance. So what about the freedom of people who are paying their premiums every month? They're paying for the uncompensated care.
I want to go back to this issue of minimum wage jobs that you all talk about and you want to focus on. And it sounds to me like you'd rather have no job than a minimum wage job.
Definitely not.
Well, so let's talk about the number of jobs that are created in the state of Texas. 30% of all the jobs created in America were created in the state of Texas in the last 10 years. Some of those were minimum wage jobs. But if you know the statistics, 40% of individuals that have minimum wage jobs are out of it and moving up in the first year, 80% of them after the second year. So you have to have these minimum wage jobs to get people in the workforce, and then they work their way up. That's how it works.
You know, Jeff Reed saying to me in my ear while we're listening to that, why did he do this during the debates? I mean, you heard Rick Perry. He can handle his own. He's got the facts down. He's got the statistics and did absolutely just fine. She finally just has to keep changing the subject on him. But he brings up the topic of minimum wage. We're going to go back to the phones here in just a second. I got 2 columns from Thomas Sowell on the minimum wage. What a lot of people do not understand is, number one, the minimum wage is rooted in racism. A lot of people don't know that. The minimum wage was a creature of Democrats to keep blacks from getting jobs in the 1930s. That's where the minimum wage came from. It's a creation of the Democrats to keep black people from getting jobs. They wanted to price them out of the labor market. This is what Thomas Sowell says. Some supporters of the first federal minimum wage law in the United States, the Davis-Bacon Act of 1931, used exactly the same rationale, citing the fact that Southern construction companies using non-union black workers were able to come north and underbid construction companies using unionized white labor. So the minimum wage law was a creation of the Democrats and the unions to keep black people from getting jobs because they were willing to work for less than what the union scale provided for. And what Thomas Sowell makes a good point here is minimum wage laws are hard on the poor. You know, the people that advocate minimum wage, this is all about the poor. It's all about showing compassion for the poor. But he says the actual consequences of minimum wage laws are harmful to the poor. He says this: one of the simplest and most fundamental economic principles is that people tend to buy more when the price is lower and less when the price is higher. So in other words, if you're going to hire more people at $4 an hour than you can hire at $5 an hour. So who's going to be happy about that? The people that are willing to work for $4 an hour and get a job. If you have to pay everybody $5 an hour, there's going to be a limit to the number of people that you can afford. Let's say you've got 100 units that you can spend on labor. So if you have people that are willing to work for 4 units, you can give 25 people jobs, right? Because 25 times 4 is 100. You got 100 units you can spend on labor. If you only have to spend 4 per job, you can offer 25 people jobs. But if the government arbitrarily says, no, you have to pay everybody a minimum of 5 units, how many people can you hire? 20 people. Well, that's good for those 20 people, but it is lethal for the 5 people now that don't have a job. And Thomas Sowell says, look, this is simply the way that economics works. Yet advocates of minimum wage laws seem to think that the government can raise the price of labor without reducing the amount of labor that will be hired. Simply doesn't work with that. He says, or work like that. Countries with minimum wage laws almost invariably have higher rates of employment than countries without minimum wage laws. And he mentioned Switzerland as an example. Switzerland, one of the few modern nations without a minimum wage law. Switzerland, The Economist reported in 2003, Switzerland's unemployment rate neared a 5-year high of 3.9% in February. In February of this year, Switzerland's unemployment rate 3.1%. Recent issue of The Economist showed that Switzerland's unemployment rate is 2.1%. Why? Because they have no minimum wage. When you eliminate the minimum wage, the rate of unemployment drops. So again, minimum wage, they say it's all about compassion. It is harmful. It is hardest on the poor, people looking just to get their foot on the bottom rung of the economic ladder. Let's grab a call from Larry Joe in Shreveport, Louisiana. Larry Joe, welcome to Focal Point. What's on your mind?
Hey, I was just, you made a comment a while ago about Harry Reid only having 54 votes. He'd have to have 60, and they'd have to come from Republicans. Which Republicans do you think is going to break weak on that? I mean, if you have an idea, you might ought to put their name out so the people from their states can get on and start calling them, and.
Well, I tell you, you can find out who they are, Larry Joe, by going to don'tfundobamacare.com. Go to
Who do you think they are?
Well, it'll tell you on the don'tfundobamacare.com website. The senators you got to worry about are the ones that have pledged not to defund Obamacare. Good guys like Senator Tom Coburn up in Oklahoma. He said, I'm not going to defund Obamacare. I'm not for it. I'm not going to vote for it. I'm against it. Tom Coburn, one of the good guys, he says, I'm against it. And you can see those that have said, I'm not going to defund Obamacare. And then you can see the other senators, Republican senators, that haven't made up their mind. They haven't declared their position on it. And all of them need to hear from us. You got 13 or 14 senators that have pledged to defund Obamacare. You can find out who they are by going to don'tfundobamacare.com. And the word don't does not have the apostrophe in it. Don'tfundobamacare, no apostrophe.com. And Larry Joe, you can go there and find out about your two senators in Louisiana. Are they for defunding Obamacare or not? Back in 2.